Yeah, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. 6:31 on Wednesday, April 15th. This is the Montpelier-Roxbury Board of School Directors. Welcome, everyone. I wanted to kick off the meeting with a couple of notes of recognition, actually a few, because I wanted to highlight a few of the things from Libby's superintendent report and the newsletter that you sent, the district newsletter, as well as a few other things happening in our schools. To say first, congratulations to our MHS mask program on their performance of She Kills Dragons. Very cool. I hope everyone is super proud of their accomplishments there. And also wanted to recognize here at the high school, the Action Club, and show some appreciation for the Race Against Racism event that they put on, that they organized last week. Sam, did you want to share anything about? I don't know, are you in Club Action? Great. Would you like to share anything about that?
Yeah, I could share some stuff. So basically last Friday, we had our Race Against Racism event, which is we have classes, 2 classes in the morning, and then the whole school breaks for assembly. And we have specifically BIPOC performers. We had 3 students this year who performed. And then the rest were professionals from our local communities. And we had poetry, African drumming, singing, and also presentation about basically just there's a bill that's, well, it's an amendment to the Constitution of Vermont that is being made right now, and we invited someone to speak about that with the students. And after that, people went to lunch or a workshop, and we made sure that the lunch was sort of themed around different like international communities. So last year we did a curry, and this year we did lo mein. We also have Ben and Jerry's ice cream to keep people engaged.
I mean, they have a social justice mission.
Yeah. And workshops featured things like drumming, dancing. We had 2 people who recently went to Palestine and lived there for like a few months, so they were talking about their experience there. Trying to think of more. We had multiple cooking ones. People really like the cooking. We had a poetry one, which I heard really good feedback about. It was apparently very powerful. And a lot of different ones. We had 20 different options for students.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for putting all that on.
Yeah.
And then wanted to move on to the middle school and congratulate some of our 5th graders who won the Dr. King poster contest at the state level. Isabel Bridgman, Dorothy Webb, Zoe Bromley, and Adam McCulligan. All, I guess MSMS swept the awards at the yeah. Very cool. Plus the 7th and 8th graders just completed their Vermont History Day. So really wanted to recognize their hard work as well as the hard work of the 7th and 8th grade humanities teaching teams at MSMS. And then not to leave UES out, I got a chance to get a sneak peek at the 3rd grade art and music show today, celebrating global connections. And it's just as good as you would imagine it would be. It's fantastic. So just wanted to highlight some of the great things happening in our schools as we kick off the meeting.
I was at the PhD event at St. Mike's.
Yeah.
It's super cool because MSMS like takes the gym over.
Yeah.
It isn't
for 100 students who presented at the state.
Yeah, and it's like we are loud. It's very good. And they did really well. They won a bunch of different things. And
yeah, we have 14 kids moving on.
Yeah.
Great, to the national competition. That is awesome. That is awesome. All right. Next order or first order of business for official order of business is a public comment. I don't think there's anybody in the room for public comment. Do we have anyone online interested in making a public comment?
There is somebody online, but they not raised their hand.
Oh, yes. If you would like to, sorry, I should say that. If you would like to make a comment during public comment, if you're online, you just use the raise hand function, which is at the bottom of your screen, I believe. Just click it and we'll be able to move you into the speaker's queue. But you're also welcome to just enjoy watching the meeting.
Not here.
Okay. Well, then let's move on to the consent agenda, which is an point in the meeting where we move a lot of mostly pro forma items to put in front of the board and the community all at once, just to save us a bit of time. But of course, any board member can pull an item from the consent agenda for discussion and questions. I think the way I'd like to do this is make the motion first, because I am anticipating we got some questions about some of the items. So let's make the motion first, and then during discussion period, we can pull any items that board members have questions about. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Okay, thanks, Rhett. Is there a second? Scott? Oh. Thank you both. Okay, so discussion or questions.
I had a question.
Mhm.
About, I have a couple questions, but about the Community National Bank proposal.
Yep.
At first I looked at this and I said, oh, those rates look pretty good. Let's go for it. But there wasn't a lot of context about the process that led to this as the final output. So was there comparison, contrast, and all that kind of
Yeah.
fun stuff
We asked Coach Mike to come.
fresh off the diamond?
Can you zip up your shirt, please?
Yeah.
It says B32 on the.
Oh, no.
Yeah, can you cover up a little bit? Thanks.
For those of you watching at home, Mike. Mike
Look, you
seems
kind of do this when you hired me.
through moonlights, I guess I
know,
would say.
and I'm
moonlights.
trying to
There's
break
32
you,
baseball
breaking
teams.
you.
I think it's great.
Thank
I
you
think
for your
it's great.
service.
We're being very neighborly.
That's right.
Don't egg him on, Mia. Don't egg him on.
And then once we merge, I'll be coaching this team.
Oh, gosh. You just said that. in front of a hot meeting.
Should I say?
Yeah.
That would be great. Yes, you can join Elaine. at the
That's a great
table.
question, Justin. You're right. There was a lot of work that went into this recommendation.
Yeah.
I was just trying to keep it simple and show you the proposal that I'm gonna be recommending. Here's the good news. There were 4 banks that all wanted our business. They all gave very competitive bids. In fact, one of the 4, which I'm not gonna mention the name, has historically not put their hat in the ring in other districts that I was at. So it just goes to show you that Montpelier-Roxbury is a coveted institution for banking purposes. And so when you look at this, I look at a couple things. Obviously the borrowing rate and the investment rate, and that delta is your yield spread. So Community National by far had the highest yield spread. In the furthest column, that's if in a perfect world, if myself and my team collectively manage working capital correctly, we could actually make money with this, which means that net income is the difference between the investment income less the debt expense component. And so, within $1,000 here, you can see that Community National and Passumpsic were the 2 leaders based on the yield spread and the management. That net income number comes from a cash flow statement that I am forced to provide each bank. It shows all the ins and all the outs as they occur on a per monthly basis. And that's how they want to see that in order for them to validate how much money we're allowed to borrow under the TAN. And for those who don't know, TAN stands for Tax Anticipation Note, also known as a revenue, a RAN, Revenue Acceptance Note. So anyway, anticipation note. Yes.
Can you explain why we take out a TAN?
Great question. Yeah, I should have probably prefaced that, huh? It's all based on how the town, the city of Montpelier and the town of Roxbury send their money to us. So the timing of those property tax payments require us to have some kind of like a line of credit, working capital line of credit, just so I can pay bills for all of us coming right out of the gate in July and August and September until that first rounds of property tax money starts coming in, along with the money from the AOE, of course, and the state as part of that ed fund. Yes, just timing. Something to note here, we can't pay it off early, which is fine. These aren't designed to be paid off early. We could have gone the route of a pure line of credit where you borrow, you draw down, you pay it back as soon as you have all your money. But that becomes just a pure expense instrument. I'd like to say that we're going to make a little bit of money, and that's why we're going this path. Just with good capital management.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the TAN itself?
One last closing statement. We'll be doing this every year. So right now, Community Nationals, they're in the driver's seat. I think they deserve our business again, but no matter who we bank with, they're going to have to earn it every year. And so we'll do this every single year. And I'm not afraid to make change. I've made changes before with banks. So. That's it. That's all I got.
Any other questions on the consent agenda?
Um,
Tim?
I know, could you just walk us through the transportation bid?
You want to do it right now?
Yeah, if you could.
Why not?
Sure.
More papers?
Yeah, I've got some.
We do have it. What came
Oh,
in?
good. Everyone brought it. I have the last minute send. I apologize. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this was, look, in hindsight, I wish I could have started this over a month ago. We're putting pressure on the transportation bidders because for them to commit to providing services for us, you know, they've got to make their commitments on usually leasing new buses, right? So that's why there wasn't a lot of lead time, and I apologize for making this recommendation and this quick decision. But basically, I wanted to make sure that we were doing what's best for the district. So I went out and got 3 different bids. One from the current provider, who is Student Transportation, okay, STA. I also got one from First Student, who's also in the local area. I believe they do Washington Central, or some pieces of Washington Central, and then obviously Butler's bus service, and they're really big down in the Woodstock area, and they're also very available up in CCSU, the Northeast Kingdom. So they've got some coverage, and I've got some relationships here. So I feel fortunate that we're able to get 3 separate bids from 3 really good companies. And what the analysis is telling us is Student Transportation, the current provider, is definitely the lead dog here. They are providing, you know, great service, as they have been, I think. And they're also doing it at the most cost effectiveness. And my recommendation at this point, based on the data that we have, is that we would go again with Student Transportation. Yes.
Is this similar with Community National, where it's an every year we look at it thing, or is it just like a 4-year contract?
That's a great question. This is going to be a 4-year commitment. I added a 5th as optional, but we have the ability to say no. Yeah, because the reason why you want to do at least 3, preferably 4, is it all has to do with they're trying to match up their commitments to the lessors from the bus companies, like WC Cressy as a major leasing company for buses, and so they're gonna marry our contract with the length of the lease with those companies. That's why you really want to do 3 to 4 years. And I'll be honest, you know, even if we did this in-house, like, I wouldn't recommend buying buses. This is one part of the country you want to lease and then get rid of them based on what happens. The roads here,
Yeah.
you know, you've seen the rust, right? It's brutal.
Yeah, in winter, salt and everything.
It's awful, right?
Just to make sure I'm reading this correctly, what I understand is that top line in bold for every year is just like, these are our regular routes, basically. And then when we ask them to drive for field trips, there's a cost per mile, I guess, for the bus, and then also driver cost per hour with a minimum pay to the driver of $140.
You got it.
Okay. So then tell me why does it say, if any, for the fuel surcharge? Is that because some fuel is included in that?
Well,
these
with,
costs?
they want to protect themselves, and it's a good protection clause, based on the volatility of gas. I mean, you see it now in the pump, right? So what they're saying is if gas exceeds that value, there'll be a surcharge. So in one case, Butler's case, they said, not applicable, we'll take all the risk. I've never seen that before. I've been doing this a while. You know, and obviously First Student and Student Transportation, they're setting what they say to be the threshold.
So that means that if gas is below $4.04, we're not actually paying more for gas. It's once it goes above $4.04.
You got it.
Got it. Okay.
Mike, how'd the costs come in against your expectations? Whatever we were modeling in the budget, are we pretty much?
Yeah,
on par?
well, actually, because we've kind of right-sized the ship as far as what our needs are, we may actually have a little bit of savings here. I don't want to jinx it, but it looks like we will. But the extracurricular activity level at this district is pretty high. So this, if I could quantify for you, co-curricular, athletics, field trips, it's in the $200,000 range. It's not a small number. So that's why I put these other factors in there so you could see what we're paying. Because it's not standard. It's not considered their standard home to school or the late bus or tech run. You know, it's just non-standard. And so, but we have access to 2 buses every day to do what we need to do to send our kids where they need to go that have nothing to do with home to school. It's athletics, field trips, co-curriculars. 2 buses are at our disposal every day. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
So given they're fairly significantly different across the 3. But the student transportation proposal has like some pretty loaded extras. Did you model out how those match those that were either NA or a lot less? And like, are we still in the realm of savings despite the fact that?
Yeah, so the current contract is very similar to how they're pricing it again. So I know that's about 200,000. In full transparency, I did not model out the differences between the hourly rate and the mileage, but I'd be willing to bet that these guys have been doing this a long time. It's probably just a different way of presenting it. I mean, if I needed to model it, I probably could, but it's going to be challenging because I'd have to know in advance all the different things we do, and every year it changes, right? I think it's just a way. It's a way for them to price. Either they're going to pay for it through the driver, or you're going to pay through it through the mileage. But no one's going to take a loss on that. So I would say our numbers are about the same no matter what we do.
It does look like the other 2 bidders have I mean, more than twice the cost per mile as STA.
Right, but it's also half the cost of the driver. I think that's what Justin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And right, or in some cases not applicable.
Right.
Which I was shocked to see that actually.
Yeah, the not applicable, that is interesting, but the lot lower means that we're paying money sooner.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, yeah. So as your business guy, I would recommend, similar to the Community National, I'm recommending that we stay with student transportation. And again, I apologize for having to kind of rush this through. This ideally would have gone through the operations committee. So I apologize for that, but we're under the gun because these guys need an answer. I promise you, if I'm still here in 4 years, this will be much sooner.
You're gonna have to change your t-shirt.
Wow, she's
Yeah,
not letting
we'll
us
have
on
a
that.
whole different schooling naming convention and mascot name.
All right. I'm right. Second. Are there any other questions on the transportation bids?
Just a question. I'm making the assumption that part of the reason that we're choosing to continue with someone we worked with before is that they're a known entity and we're pretty happy with what the service they've been providing. Would you say that we've been pretty happy?
I've only been here 6 months, so I don't have a lot of history. From what I know, I think the answer is yes to that for what I know. But looking at this just dollars and cents, I think we'd be crazy not to consider them again.
I'd say overall, they've been good partners. I think there are challenges with Roxbury's routes And I think those challenges will be there regardless of which bus company we go with, quite honestly. Because it's not the company necessarily that controls it. So there have been challenges there, and it's a long distance for kids to run right on the bus.
And I don't think we could make a bad choice here. I have experience with all three. But I think the data is telling us we should stay.
Any other questions on transportation? Okay, any other discussion of the consent agenda?
Might be off unless I apply to the climate survey somewhere.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for care. So, I mean, not to go into it in too much detail, but in looking at the data that was received for the climate survey, I found like 2 or 3 anomalies where it looks like there were responses that were maybe duplicated in the system, and I don't know if we culled that out when we were generating our sort of like summary findings. So I feel like that one may be worth pulling from the acceptance and maybe revisiting it. I don't know if anybody else looked at it
Yeah, that
the
was,
same way.
that was something that the evaluation committee missed. We did not look for duplicates before writing our summary. We would have to see if it's Panorama that created the pie chart summaries. So I think what we would need to do is see if Panorama, if we can go into Panorama and say, oh, like delete duplicates or merge duplicates.
Yeah.
And then ask Panorama to run that pie chart summary PDF again. And I don't know if Anna.
They would adjust the heat map too.
Right, exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could do that, and see what we get. I think that's fine.
I think it's worth it, because there was definitely a slice of the data that will be meaningfully adjusted. If we
Like one of, like some of the
depending-
identity
yeah.
and tenure and things like, it's possible. Yeah, it depends on where those duplicates lay.
Yeah.
Fall or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, so that is something we can try. I don't know if it's possible to ask Panorama to do that, but it's a pretty robust database, so I would think it would be able to do it, so. So who made the motion? God, nope, Scott and Ella fought out a second on the second. I think Rhett made the motion. Rhett. Would you be willing to accept a friendly amendment to your motion, which is move the consent agenda minus the climate survey summary? Okay, I think we can just go with that then. Are there any other questions or discussion?
Is there something on here in the co-curricular contracts?
Though, those were attached to the very first email, I think, from Anna, but they don't get linked because they're confidential until we.
There's no decision that we're making on those.
What, if we vote to approve and adopt or whatever, accept the consent agenda, then we are essentially giving Libby the green light to hire those people as.
That were
Yeah.
named in that. Okay.
Yeah. Same with the new hire that was added. Yeah, any other questions or discussion? Okay, so then all those in favor of approving the consent agenda with minus the climate survey summary, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, thanks, everybody.
So, Mayor, really quickly, I didn't want to interrupt any of that, but I did a little parliamentary homework.
Good.
So consent agendas are come pre-moved. So there's no motion necessary.
Oh, wow.
You
So we
just-
just start discussion.
There is no discussion. You just vote if somebody wants to take something out of the consent agenda,
Uh-huh.
then you can move it to a discussion. But consent
Oh,
agendas are, yeah, they're pre-moved and no discussion. You just go right to the vote if nobody wants to take
how did
something
you
out.
find that information? It's in your book?
Lots of meetings.
Oh, it's
Books,
somewhere in the book.
websites, so.
All right,
And so if there's there's anything that we think is gonna be discussed, then we can have it in the discussion
got it.
and then just right through this.
We were ready to discuss it with me.
All right,
So,
okay, so that could be,
for
that
the
would be our
future.
process going forward is, I would say, are there any items members would want to pull from the consent agenda to
Exactly.
move to discussion?
Exactly.
And then we would just vote on the
Yeah,
consent agenda.
and
Okay,
you as chair can decide to have that conversation right after the consent agenda
Yep.
conversation.
Yeah,
Or move it
later in the
down to
meeting.
discussion.
Yeah.
later.
okay. All right, thanks. All that power.
Taking your
You
job
look like you have a
very
thought or a
seriously.
question, Ella.
I thought, a question, so as someone who's not on the committees that were, the minutes were here today. There was a lot that was not explained, right? So if the minutes from committee meetings say things like the RFP was discussed, we don't know what that discussion was. And I've been looking a little bit at some of the other Vermont districts, and there's a lot more meat in the
Mhm.
minutes for folks who are not there. So if we're going to have those as part of the consent agenda, as the rationale for some of these decisions, it probably would be helpful for us to have that in mind as we write our committee minutes,
Mhm.
so that people know what went into that decision making, and then we can just kind of move forward with it versus having to pull things out and ask about things that we don't know how the committee got to that decision.
Right, because the minutes are basically like an update for us, and if we have the information in the update, then we don't have to.
Then
talk
we don't
about it.
have to talk about it
Mhm.
in here unless we have a question.
Yeah.
So I didn't have time to do my homework on that one. I believe minutes are not supposed to be a record of the conversation, but simply a record of decisions or actions. And so we're not like it's not a transcript or notes
Yeah.
of the meeting. It's simply like
But
what decision.
it could be like the committee decided to recommend such and such RFP or such and such
Exactly.
bid to the board.
Yeah, and so
would
that's
be
why
the
they are
record.
relatively bare bones, is
Yeah.
because we don't want them to be chock full of detail, because that's not the purpose of minutes, as I understand.
Okay, I think we're good to move on. We can make a note of how to help minutes be more informative, but not overly, not a transcript of the meeting. We're gonna kick it over to Elaine.
Oh.
Thank you for being here, Elaine.
That Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Well, that all looks at you, Jay. It's which
Somewhere on there.
Different years of experience.
Yeah.
As a couple new board members. We're gonna start out with an activity. We want to click onto the next page. Just my van and yourself. Oh, I should have been reading this. So I have always wanted the postcards. You'll see, I will want them back. I have to say that because people tend to want to keep postcards. But I want you to pick one that represents for you individually the hopes and dreams for the Montpelier-Roxbury schools. And you're gonna use that when you introduce yourself to the vote. So you're gonna say, Ellen, this card, that's for me to represent. And I want you to hang on to it, because then I'm gonna do another. I want you to have one card to remind yourself what you said, your hopes and dreams. Right? So you're gonna have to get up and move, because that's a good thing once you've been saying for a while, right? So I'm just gonna like lay them here. There's a lot, there are duplicates. It's okay if the one person takes, a couple people take the same card. And give you a couple minutes to and pick out a card that speaks to you about your hopes and dreams.
Does Libby get to pick a card too, or just board members?
Libby can. Of course she can. They're fun cards. Nice.
Thanks.
as you all are picking a card, I feel like I should introduce my friend Elaine Pinkney a little more than saying.
I'll say something too.
Okay, so Elaine is a veteran superintendent in Vermont, no longer retired. But she one day sat in my living room and I thought educational God was in
Oh.
my living room talking to me about leadership and superintendency. So she is renowned in Vermont and very veteran
Thank you for that.
and loved and incredibly smart on how to run a board.
You want to keep it together or how are you? What about you?
The districts. You know, like one that you can say, I think it's fine when the two donkeys like, you know, hugging each other, because I think we're all about caring about each other. The idea.
Thanks to you. So
Yeah.
Angles.
And I need to see that.
So like if I hope that all students can make friends with a cat.
There you go.
They say that.
So it's not, it's metaphorical enough.
What? Add more minute?
There was this, I was reading through it. And I can't find it. Somebody was.
You can try from.
I saw that one. I saw that one too.
We can do this Quaker meeting style. If the spirit moves you, speak up, get up, say, hey, here I am, Mia Moore, and here is. That's kind of like a play on words, isn't it? Mia Moore?
Yes.
That's very nice. Anyway, just say your name and everybody else knows you, but just say what it is, your card and why, what the metaphor is. for
Elaine,
what-
you want to move that black microphone closer to you? Just
Yes.
so everybody can
Yep.
hear you.
Okay, here we go. Who would like to go first? Don't be shy.
I'll go first.
Great.
Hi, my name is Kristen Cantu, and my postcard is a photo of a young child sitting in a crowd. And he has something that looks like maybe binoculars, but the look on this young child's face is just pure joy at what they're experiencing. And so I guess my hope is that children and adults alike in our district continue to find joy in learning and teaching, and that it's a way that we can all connect and be together.
It's a great beginning. Wants to go next? You'll see, I'm taking notes about your cards.
I'll go. I'm Tim Duggan and I got this picture of a kid reading a book with a bunch of books around him. And while the, stack of books might be a little dated, I think I like the idea of a kid, reading and having abundant educational resources there to kind of feed a growing mind.
Thank you.
I can go. I'm Mia Moore, and I chose this picture of two hands, one more dark skinned and one more light skinned. Holding like one hand holding the other, and I chose it because to me it symbolizes we're in this together. And that's a big dream that I have for the district, is that we see this as a very collaborative effort, and in doing so we listen to each other and we learn from each other and we learn together.
I'm Casey Captain. I chose the Depression era mom with her kids, but I'm choosing to look past the sad side of that. And more on the side of her being in thoughtful contemplation of where she is in the world and where she can support her children and grow.
So hopefully we're not moving into the Depression era reflection, but more in the space of thoughtful consideration of ourselves, people that are close to us and our position in the world. Thank you, Nancy.
My name is Justin Tees. I picked this picture of Sammy Davis Jr., who's apparently like flying through the air in a very athletic stance. And I think that I was sort of drawn to it because it just, to me, sort of embodies the need to like attack everything with energy. And he was generally just a pretty cool guy.
Hello, I'm Ella Jurgen, and my person is a grown-up type person in a tuxedo with a top hat who is water skiing in kind of turbulent water. And I liked the silliness of it. I think that working with kids, we need to stay silly. And I thought it was interesting that the title of this was From Wedding to Wake. So the idea of being in somewhat turbulent waters as a state and certainly as a country and even as a world, and kind of retaining your composure despite that is a hope that I have for all of us and for our district. And also, I think there are probably some outdated customs and traditions that we have in the education world that maybe are ready to ride off into the sunset, like this dapper person. Thank you.
I'm Brett Williams, and I picked this picture, this drawing by MC Escher. Hands drawing each other or something like that. Because it's a school district is incredibly complex, and it takes a lot of people working together. One teacher to teacher, grade to grade, administrators, teachers, a lot of people depending on each other to get something done.
Thank you.
I think, my name is Sam Boyce. I chose an image of a bunch of men like looking into a hood of a car. And I feel like this image is sort of showing like basically facing problems together and sort of like a lot of different voices and opinions solving things. And also I also see this as sort of like educating and learning from each other about what is happening. So I feel like I would like to see that more where it's as a community solving problems, which sort of the board is doing. But just a lot of input.
Jake Feldman. I chose a picture of a woman who sort of has a rhinoceros that she's tamed. I think that, you know, public education generally, people don't know how fierce it is, kind of like a rhinoceros, which is the most deadly mammal in Africa. People don't realize that, you know, because it's so fat or whatever. But I'd like to think of our district as sort of taming the rhinoceros and being very confident, like the woman in this picture.
We're gonna put that on my Concessi's new t-shirt. Yeah, taming the rhinoceros.
Scott Lewins, this is entitled Kitten and Mouse. And I just see like intense curiosity on the face of this kitten. And yeah, I just like to think of our district as a place that can foster that curiosity.
Well, here's what I heard without, I'm writing fiercely here to just get it all down, but you don't have like competing interests. Everybody wants the same thing, right? You want a different way to see it. Different way of thinking of how wise yours is.
I wanna go back and just look at it because when we're talking. um, the men inside the car working in the engine, you remember that one? You know, facing problems together, lots of different opinions, learning from each other, with lots of input. No, but all of these great things, I love that as students like that, right? And that's hopefully characterizes your board. Because that's what we're going to be doing tonight. How do we get to that, right? That like, there could be a lot of different opinions, people might think differently about something, but how do we go about doing our work so that we're always aiming for all of the things that you said, and we'll have a chance to come back to that. So if you want to go on to that next slide, I apologize for how small that is. And I'm going to do the same thing here so I can see. So you're going to have to click here as we go along. So this is the realities. Here you've said all the things, your hopes and dreams, what you really care about, what's close to your heart. And the fact is you're elected as an individual. And you have these individual hopes and dreams, or things you really care about that you want to see, whether it's being silly, whether it's like working together, whether it's like taming the rhinoceros, whatever it is, that you can discover as a member of the team. Right? That's an important thing to always remember. Yes, you bring yourself, now you're the board is the entity. Let me get to the next one. You do not have authority as an individual board member. So this is something especially for new board members. You get elected to the board, you have neighbors, friends, your relatives, they go, oh, we're gonna hear to the person who's on the board. And they say, hey, I'm wondering about that. You say, I am not a board member, except when I'm sitting around this table, being a board member for that. And that's, you know, it's almost like people board members need to find the words to use when somebody says over that, you know, probably set whatever the grocery store here is, and that you're not here to like, you know, solve their problems, right? You can bring it. Let's say somebody comes to you at the grocery store and they say, you know, like, boy, that fourth thing is just not true. Say, well, I don't speak as a board member when I'm an individual, but I'm happy to bring that to the board's attention. It crosses the line when you say, I'll do something about it. So it's always important never to let constituents imagine that you as an individual board member are going to make something happen. That's what that's about. And the last one is your success as a board member is completely dependent on the success of the board. And so that's what makes you want to, like, you know, behave collaboratively and work together, because you will be judged as a group, because it is the board, not the individual. The next one. Okay, so the main thing, I mean, I think we can all agree whether we're talking about the state of Vermont or we're talking about the district here or any district in Vermont, our job, right, is to make sure that student achievement and well-being is there for all kids. And if you're on a board, you are in a very close relationship, especially with the superintendent, but with the administrative team. The board chair and the superintendent in particular have a really close relationship, but there are things that like one group or another is really responsible for. For the board part, you're responsible for vision and mission. Yes, with input from people in the community. Yes, with input from students. Yes, with input from teachers. But that's your job to say, here's the vision and mission. You're responsible for contracts. You know, you direct impact on how the school is going to run. So this is an important role. You're responsible for superintendent evaluation. You're responsible for policy, for resource allocation, budget, and community engagement. And on the other side, the superintendent, the management part, is responsible for program instruction. We're going to get more into this. This is really just a really quick overview here. Indicators and results. So like, okay, you've got program instruction. How will we know how we're doing? Those are the indicators and the results. So the superintendent would share. Human resource management, hiring people. They would say, like, the board hires the superintendent. The superintendent hires everybody else. The superintendent comes to the board and says, here's my recommendation. The board can say no. You can't say, I get this other person, right? The board still has to take action, but it's the superintendent who hires every other position. School improvement plans. And I guess not if I'm continuous improvement, if I need to change that slide. And reports to the board and the community. And then in the middle, it's all about outcomes, but there's a bunch of other stuff there, right? But you do develop. You have to build collaborative relationships. It is not, it is no service to the kids in the Montpelier-Roxbury School District if you're at odds with each other, right? You need to have the united front. You need to be a team working together, not because you're ignoring things, but because you develop a way of doing work together that is collaborative. Climate, you know, and that's also about relationships, making sure that there is a climate that's professional, that's honest, that's respectful. Communication is the responsibility of both sides, the board to the community, but there's no doubt that the principals of the schools and the superintendent have a big role in also. And accountability. And the accountability from the superintendent and the management team to the board, and the board to the superintendent and management team in terms of providing the resources, providing the support, being there for these kinds of things. I'm going to go to the next slide. So board priorities. I know this is one of the things that you guys, I think, want to really talk about. Like, how does this all work? And I heard some things in the conversation, I think earlier when you were having the discussion about the consent agenda, that reminded me that, you know, when you're a new board member, you are jumping on the middle of that carousel that's going around, right? It's a big cycle and it's moving, it's not stopping for you. It's not saying like, if you're a new board member, wait, we're just gonna freeze things in place. We're gonna slowly go around the circle and explain how everything goes and make sure you know all the pieces, and then we'll start talking again. No, it just keeps going. And so in a way, there has to be some kind of trust in the system, in the board members who have been there before, that by the time you get around the circle, it'll all make sense. That is not to say that you shouldn't ask questions. You should, but you should also, maybe that's not right for me to say. I advise that you be comfortable with a little bit of distance. I don't understand this 100%, but I know once I've been around that wheel, I will. So board priorities are the first thing, and that's going to be something that the board does. They're going to set their priorities either at a board meeting or at a board retreat, or as a result of looking at some, you know, assessment data or, you know, program data or whatever that Lydia is going to bring to you. And then you're going to establish your board priorities. From that is going to come board goals, right? So the board says my priorities, I really care because, you know, like there's a whole lot of stuff going on about kids and reading. That's a priority. We want to know about that. We want to hear more about that. We want to know how our kids are doing. We want to hear how they're being taught, blah, 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 blah. We're going to have some goals around that. And from that, those are going to be aligned with the continuous improvement plan that the administration does. That's not board work. That's administration. The administration does a continuous improvement plan that is aligned with the board goals, the board priorities. And from that will come indicators of success. What are you looking for? Are you wanting to see improvement in the percentage of kids who are, if the reading metaphor going here? Percentage of kids who are reading in grade level, grade 3, 4, I see them. Percentage of kids that are on grade level in math at grade 4, 8, and how many of them are in algebra 2 when they're sophomores. You know, those are the kind of indicators that you can piece together to be really more informative than any one single indicators. So those are the things that really you depend on your administrators from. You give input. You say, well, what about? But your team is the one who's going to know, like, what's the research saying? What do we care about? From that, there'll be data analysis. And I think that, like, it's very possible that there's 1 or 2 of you on this board that are really good at that. I certainly worked, you know, at one time, the first week was a superintendent. I had 52 state board members on 7 boards. It was a little crazy. But I will say this, there were people on those boards who really knew about data analysis. They would have been better than any of us. It wasn't their job to do the data analysis. It's the administrators, right, who come to you. If that is the story that you have, then there's nothing wrong with saying I want to be on that committee, whatever the committee is going to look at. But the superintendent and the superintendent's team is going to help you in looking at the data, is what we should be looking. Where are the trends that we're noticing, that kind of thing. And for that, the board's reviewing, okay, I already got into that, and then communication. So that's the annual report. What does it look like for us? That's circle, and then you come back and somewhere in there, and I know you guys are doing really good work around this. There are board retreats, board development sessions. I know you sent me the whole list of what you're going to be doing for the rest of the year. It gets to this.
That's our intent with slowing down the carousel a little bit.
Yeah, that's
We'll see how well we do at it.
because, yes, you can slow down the carousel, but it's still moving.
Because there is.
Those are like beyond your control, right? So I want to pause here and see, are there any questions, any thoughts, any challenges to anything I said, or, you know, any just comments in general that you might have? Yeah, go ahead.
So we're about to, at the end of this school year, we're gonna be doing a revisit of what our priorities are, and that will inform goals for the coming year. When you say aligned with continuous improvement plan, should we say, Libby, what are your school's continuous improvement plans, and therefore we set the goals, or should we say we?
No, because you have to approve our continuous improvement.
I think it's like this.
Yeah,
I think
okay,
you should know what the continuous improvement plan says,
okay,
because Libby didn't, you know, put together the continuous improvement plan in a vacuum. She had like state regulations that said you must blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. It must include blah, 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 blah. And she also had principals and teachers who I assume were like part of groups saying, we really need to work on, you know, school climate. We really need to work on reading at rate, whatever it is. And so by the time you look at the continuous improvement plan, you're not just seeing what Libby's thinking, you're seeing the magic that she's done by bringing groups of people together to get them to agree as a group collectively to make sure that the school system is doing the best work it can.
Mhm.
So obviously, if Libby came to you with a school improvement plan, continuous improvement plan, that didn't align at all with what you're thinking, that's a conversation.
Mhm.
It's not going to change the continuous improvement plan right then, right? Because that is just, it's one of the things that you have to do in Vermont. Now that's how it's structured.
Right.
But it's the conversation that says next year when you're going around that circle, because, you know, I just did one circle, but my gosh, right? There's a bunch of spinning circles, you know, around data, around curriculum, around professional development, around board management, around all of it. So those things are all spinning. There's one of those cards that's like some guy trying to spin like 100 plays. A lot of people choose that one. So it's not like, and in that moment, it wouldn't be appropriate. It wouldn't be the best move to say, oh, well, you know, that's your continuous improvement plan, but we as a board collectively are deciding to.
Okay.
That wouldn't be helpful. But it's appropriate to have a conversation next year when you're meeting. Would like you to consider, please bring back to the groups you meet with that the board is really concerned about civics instruction.
Okay.
Right? Stuff's happening and we feel like our kids need more of that. We don't see it there. That kind of thing. But see, it's collaborative. It's not. Yeah.
So what's the timeline for the drafting of the continuous improvement plan relative to our?
I'm gonna let.
So we start that work and we're having it right now. We start that work in December, January. With our principals doing all kinds of problems of practice. You start with problems of practice and you go into the 5 whys and you do fishbone diagrams to really get at root causes. And the principals work with their leadership team, their guiding coalition, which is teacher leadership team, their caregiver councils, which we know very well. Have you worked with Rachel yet? I'm just talking about it today. We haven't been there yet. I just want to call you out on that. And you know, students here at MHS and then where it's appropriate. And so they are drafting their goals. We've just talked about it this afternoon. They're going to have drafted goals after that whole process on May 20th. at our leadership team meeting, and then on June 3rd, so on May 20th, we'll be all, like, they'll be presenting it to the whole team, and we'll be pushing back and asking more questions to further revise the goal. And then on June 30th, you have to have your continuous improvement, third, thank you. You have to have your continuous improvement plan, like, part of the board agenda. We have to literally link the board agenda to our grants management system in order to get our grants for the next school year. So we'll have it on the agenda on June 3rd for the team.
Such an important piece there to underscore that it's linked to the grant management and the money that's coming to Montpelier,
Yes.
right? And to underscore why it can't be that the board says, oh, we don't like this continuous improvement plan, we have another idea, right? But it is the juncture at which the board can say, thank you for all this amazing amount of work. We're really glad that you were thoughtful about how you did it. You took the time, you considered all of this. Next year, we'd like you to consider. And I don't know if there's an opportunity for a board member to, like, sit in on any of those meetings or not. I have no idea, but certainly that's a cycle within a cycle, right? That's another cycle that's going on while you're doing all your business.
And I'm gonna add on to that, Elaine, too, that our goals, we have to have them within the themes the Agency of Education gives us. So let's say, for like, you're making me think of different examples of where it could come in
Right.
conflict with each other. So we need to have an academical SEL goal, and I think those are the two main ones. And then UES has to have an Act 139 for literacy assessment goal.
Yeah.
And let's say the board says, you know, we've heard a lot from the community about technology use in the classroom and screen time in the classroom, which is not something we haven't heard, right?
Right.
And it's not something that the administration, this administration certainly cares about that. There wouldn't be a spot for that in the continuous improvement plan. That's something that can be a board priority, 100%, and something we can focus on, but not as part of the CIP.
Right. That's a really good point. Did everybody understand that part? That, like, the CIP is defined, right? It's a requirement by the Agency of Education, and probably some of it's in statute even. But that doesn't mean that the board can't have other priorities.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions about this or any other comments that you want to make? So that's the cycle. It does feel probably like, you know, like you're jumping onto something and it's a whirlwind at the front end of it. But honestly, after a year of going through the cycle, it'll all make sense. Okay. So the board work plan. So one of the, do you have a board work plan? Is there like a calendar for the year? I know you have that, the one that you shared with me, which was impressive. I thought that was
Well, thank you.
really good work. I just want you to take a minute to think about, how does the work plan align with your focus on student outcomes? So do you have regular times in the board work plan where you turn to that and say, by design, we've had a focus on student outcome. So every month or every other month or however often we turn to that and we highlight, this is one of the board's focus. And what does the board spend most of its time on? Since it seems like you do have a board work plan that's aligned with student outcomes, do you feel that the time that the board spends its time together, that it's spending most of its time on that or on other things? That would be something to then start thinking about. How might we do things differently? And how does it align with the board's priorities and the identified work? And what I'd like you to do is maybe, like, in groups of 3 or 2, you know, 2 or 3, just talk about that. Does it, and even you brand new board members, does it feel like most of the time the board is spending its meeting time on the important stuff? Talk amongst yourselves, bring it in. Yeah, it's real.
You mean?
Yes, I was gonna say it depends on the hierarchy.
Yeah, but. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About like another minute and just back together.
I do. Yeah.
And oh, Mia's gonna do something good.
Why don't we do? And maybe this is the question for you when we come back together, is that I'm curious how our financial responsibility.
I heard that over there too.
Yeah.
All right, if we could come back together, would you
Yeah.
mind sharing, like, you're thinking about this group over here?
We talked about our meetings and agendas. And, you know, how maybe you don't spend a lot of time aligning. It's not very focused on students.
Say something about budget.
Well, when the budget season is happening, that's kind of where,
Yes.
where we are, that takes over, so that's a good chunk, that's a quarter of the year.
And here's how I came to the budget. When I, you know, the first job I had where I had to really deal with budget was when I was principal in Williston and we did not superintendent. And the principals weren't superintendents in that district then. It was such a loosely confederated, and we're talking about the last century, right? And then all of a sudden I have to put together. So, you know, like as a principal, you were all the whole like, you're working with teachers and everything, and I did a total 360 on it, or 180 on it, because I realized the project is the story that you tell the public about what we do in the school. And that helped change it for me, right? Once I started looking at, not numbers, it's not just about bottom line. It really is about we're making decisions about where we're putting pots of money that align with our board priorities. It helps make that feel more aligned, right? Just constantly reminding ourselves that the budget isn't just a spreadsheet with numbers on it. It really, there's a story that's told there, and the story is about human beings who are the kids in your school. Can you say that again?
Oh my
No,
gosh.
that is the story that we tell the public about
What we're doing in school.
what we're doing, how we're prioritizing.
Well, and also you saying that reminds me, like, there's a phrase like a budget is a moral document. You know,
Yes, it is, right. Yeah, like you decide, are we, you know, like, are we putting more money into professional development or into the baseball team? I have nothing against baseball, trust me. I'm just saying, like, those are the things that really, that is the story in town. This is what we're doing, the money that you so graciously give us. We are raising the next generation of, you know, thoughtful, good readers, good problem solvers, good citizens. All that. How about this little group here? Because you were talking about that too.
Yeah, I think it's similar to what that group was saying, is that there's not a lot of connection from what we discuss in board meetings to student outcomes, that there's touches, but that we don't connect the dots to say, this, we certainly could, and we should.
Yeah.
My question, I understand the budget, like the establishment of the budget, and then it's throughout the year, there's the like paying attention to how the money is getting spent, you know, like quarterly reports
Yes,
or the progress of the Windows project or something. Is
So are those
some
the-
of the like mundane,
Yeah.
like we have
So
to
do you have a
keep on
committee
top of that?
that is a committee of the board that is kind of look at finance committee?
Yeah, operations has finance
Operations.
and sort of Like
And
the
so then
facilities.
is that like a consent agenda?
Sometimes there's board discussion around things that come from that committee.
But you could make that decision each month or each quarter when it's time for the quarter, when you could say, you know, like this needs to be a discussion item or an action item. It needs to be, but usually it's quarter,
Mhm.
or no, we're gonna put it in the, there's a board committee, trusted colleagues who are looking at this and are saying there's nothing here that we need to really have a discussion about. We'll put it in the
Mhm.
consent agenda, and unless somebody says, I'd like to take it out of the consent agenda, then it just goes and you spend more time.
Yeah.
But just being really obvious to yourselves and to the world out there, the connection with.
Mhm.
But some of it is just management. You know, education is a business. There's some stuff that's just overhead.
Yeah, I guess
Isn't
that's
a
what I'm
direct
thinking
connection.
about.
It's probably no direct connection to student outcomes.
Mhm.
Or, you know, I could probably think of a million things, right? But we need them. We need to have lights on. We need to have, you know, a comfortable place. And yes, maybe we can like go down the line and say kids live better if they're comfortable. But there's a lot of things like that that are just, you have to have that in a business, in an organization, but they're not. And so like then if you can make those things more automatic. So that you can spend your time on the things that like I think you're passionate about, because that's sort of what I heard about in your postcards. Was there anything else in this group that? Right? How about these two here, I guess?
It's pretty similar discussion. As a new board member, like I've noticed that a lot of what we talk about thus far has been finances. And I was thinking, well, maybe that's just because of the time of year we're in. But yeah, and then Tim was talking about how other things that have been suggested about pushing more of that sort of work and discussion to committees.
Yeah.
So that we can have more time to be
Yeah.
focused on.
Yeah.
The student outcomes.
You know, and if the board has a plan so that people can each year say, I'd like to be on the committee. So it's not like a set group that's always on the finance committee and always a set group that's on the policy committee. You know, that they move around so that people feel like, no, I can have my turn there. And I trust my colleagues. I know them well enough. And they respect me well enough that I know I can do this work. I trust them to do the work.
Similar to Diana, you know, I think, we talked a little bit about the ebbs and flows of the years and how. Oh, I think we do touch on student outcomes pretty regularly, but it's easy to get lost in the noise of the things that are pressing.
And some of you might be more sensitive to the fact that there's a connection to students, right? So maybe that's it too. That's why being more obvious about it. Okay, rules of the road, and I put down at the bottom because I really believe this. Working together collaboratively achieve the best results. Doesn't mean you're always going to agree. You said, by no means saying you need to be like a bunch of words, just that's not the point. But working collaboratively, and we'll talk about like what some of the norms and protocols and that principles that can help you there. Oh, yes, I'm filling up here. There's certain principles, certain norms, and certain protocols that if you adhere to those, you're more apt to be a collaborative board that trusts their colleagues, that can do work in committee without feeling like I better be on every committee because I don't know what's going to happen if I'm not there, that kind of thing. So we're going to delve into those a little bit. And the first one is governance principles. Stay focused on student achievement and wellness. I have an idea that I don't even know about. Right? This is something that you can do. Everything for the group that we care about student achievement. You're talking about it as outcomes, but it's pretty much the same thing. Govern together as a team with a common focus and purpose. The end of the road. Govern in a transparent, open, and accessible manner. Govern in collaboration with the superintendent and staff. It serves no purpose to be at odds, right? It really, you know, like you're a team, you know, like the most important, this book that is so documented. Okay, today I took out like at least 30 little,
I like that one. I like that one too.
and honestly, I took out 30 little sticky notes and I added, because whenever, and that's what I was doing when I said, yeah, I'm here in the main office, which I wasn't, but I recommend this book to all of you, and you know what? You could buy this book for all the board members. It is such a clear-headed way of thinking about what the governance core is. And it's Michael Fullen, who was like, you know, the guru of all this. And he's so even-handed about it. It is not like he's all on the superintendent side, if he's all on, no, he's on the, like, we need to work together. If we really want to do our best work, we need to work collaboratively. This is, you know, those principles in this book. But at the end of this book, there is an appendix, and you know, there are other. You could do like the NSBA, the National School Boards Association, has 8 characteristics of effective school boards, right? The group of 30 on effective governance has a list. An activity that you might want to do sometime is list all of these. The overlap is amazing, right? It's hard to not see where the overlap is. But an activity that boards do sometimes is just list all of them and then prioritize, do the dot thing. You know, pick your 5 top ones. And then from that, and I would recommend this, we did this without my own board. Once we had established the 8 or whatever that we had, they got printed up, they got laminated, and they were in front of every board member at the meeting. Just a reminder when thinking about it. You're not on the same page, right? You know, vote on it. These are our principles. We live by this. The next set of kind of jobs, our governance one, and that's how we do our work together. We respect and support one another. That's another thing that could be in front of everybody all the time. How are we behaving because it looks respectful and supportive? We communicate openly. We don't like behind the scenes and can you believe that we will send that like out in the parking lot after the board meeting? We don't do that. If we have a concern, we say, yeah, I was concerned when you said that. Right? In a respectful way so that we can get past it. We focus on the needs of the whole district. That is more important when you've got like a far-flung district and you've got schools in like 6 different towns, but you do have schools in 2 different towns. And it's really important that the world sees you behaving as they're all our kids. And they all end up at Montpelier High School, don't they?
Well, now they're all in Montpelier schools.
They're all in Montpelier schools, I think, yeah, okay. So, you know, that is important anyways, for people to see that you're looking, and, you know, that can also be like, we don't, when the budget season comes around and we're making those decisions that are telling the budget story, we don't put all the money in the high school or all the money, right? We're looking at the needs across the system and we're making decisions. This time now, we welcome input. It's not about not asking people to say, hey, I'm just wondering about, you know, and there is, you know, one of the things that we have to understand about human beings is some people are sitting here in the seat and they're just thinking, and I'm never going to say that, but they are doing as much thinking as anybody else. And there are other people, though I haven't noticed that here, who are just all about like, hey, well, I have this thought, right? You know what I mean? And both of those things are okay. That's who they are. That's how they do their thinking. Some people do their thinking out loud and other people do their thinking in their head. And both are okay. And just welcome that input, however it is. We're willing to take risks for our children. What does that really mean? So you've got like a really tough issue. Let's take, I have no idea where you are with this, so I'm going on a ledge. But let's just take cell phones in the schools, right? That is a hot thing. I mean, it was all over NPR today. It seems like it's getting like to be a bigger thing. Maybe in Vermont, we've determined how we're going to handle it. But let's just say that like, that's what you're discussing. And you know that the community out there, I'm making this up from scratch, they want their kids to have cell phones in school. They want to be able to call them. Something could happen. Maybe grandma just stopped by and they want the kid, make sure you come home right after school because grandma's here or whatever, right? But you as a board, you've been doing your due diligence. And Libby and her administration, they've been doing their due diligence. And they've brought the research and they've said, look at what's happening to our kids. So the decision you're going to make in that case, if it doesn't make it for you, I'm lucky that you're in Montpelier. You can say that and it still means something, right? And I'm making it up, but you know that the data is not good. You need to make that unpopular decision for your kids. Even though maybe your sister-in-law is gonna be mad at you, or maybe even because your neighbor's gonna be mad at you. Or because you can't shop at the local grocery store for the next month, whatever it is, you as a board sometimes make those decisions. For the kids, because that's why you're here. And listen with our hearts. And that's gonna come back up again. You know, like, some people are just really good about rolling out something, and they've said something that like another person would say, and you go like, right? But they just have a way of doing it that it makes you just feel okay about, and another person is saying the same thing, but their presentation is different. Listen with your hearts. What are they really trying to tell you? Instead of like how they're saying it is an important thing when you're dealing with grown-ups, I think. Probably with the whole world, but we take our responsibilities seriously, but not ourselves. So you weren't elected to the board so that you could be like, right, me, right? No, right? But your responsibilities, right? Think of it. How many kids in the Montpelier-Roxbury school?
1250.
1250. 1,250 kids that are dependent on the decisions that you're making that are going to have a direct impact on their lives and their futures collectively when you think about it. So responsibility, seriously, yourself, you need to sometimes just let it be. And then governance protocols. And this is like, how do we do our work? So, and I've noticed our meetings are run smoothly. That's certainly what I saw tonight. I don't know if this is how we usually run, but I certainly saw a meeting that's run very smoothly. I saw a chair who knows what she's about. I saw her listen very respectfully when Scott said, oh, there's a different way, and immediately, so that was impressive. We have a yearly board thing. I heard earlier that you do have that. Good on you twice here. We have rules of engagement for board members and community and attendance. So that's like if, let's go back to the cell phone thing. You're going to be voting on it. It's discussion item 1 month. The chairs are full. You're expecting it. Do you have, and does the public expect that? For example, here's an example. You could have, everybody gets to speak for 2 minutes. We have 20 minutes for this part of the agenda for the public to speak. If somebody has already said what you're going to say, please kindly say, I agree with Mr. Duggan here who just spoke. So that and people know it doesn't, it's a rule of engagement that has been put in place before you need it. Right. So do you already have that? Yeah, sort of. Yeah. We have yearly or more often retreats and study sessions. Well, this is what you're doing right now. And here's what I understand Libby kind of did with you earlier around roles and responsibilities and what you've got planned. So that's A+. And our board and superintendent participate in yearly goal setting and evaluation. That, you know, that wheel that we looked at goes back to that. Any questions about that? The governance protocols or the norms or the principles? And you've got them in front of you, so you can look at that. And I'm suggesting that there could be other activities you might do around those things. And finally, you know, what probably the most important thing is the rules of board relationships. They got to get along, guys, right? And I don't see that, I'm not sensing that there's any issue here, but that's really an important part. And it comes with reserved judgment. Somebody has just said something that you think is like the god-awfulest, craziest idea you've ever heard. Wait, they might get to the next part that you go, oh, but if you jump in too soon, you never hear it in the next part. Or all of a sudden somebody else has jumped in. So just reserve judgment. Let people say what they have to say. Ask questions. What about? What were you thinking about? Whatever. But reserve judgment. Listen empathetically, and we talked about that before. Like, what are they trying to say? Some people are more articulate than others, and they say it, and you know immediately go like, I wish I could say it like that. And others are more like they know they have exactly the same thoughts and feelings, but it comes out. So listen so that you're getting the message they're trying to give. Stay focused on content. Not the emotional part of it, but what is it they're trying to say? Always be true to the norms of the board, and that's what we talked about, be respectful, listen, be engaged, be cooperative. Don't take offenses personally. It's a hard one sometimes, especially if you're like, let's say there's somebody on the board who was like, gung ho. We are keeping those cell phones there. I want to be able to connect with Susie Q because I worry about this at home every day if I don't think I'm impaired. That they're not attacking me. They're just like speaking to their own sense. And I mean, I think that's an important time to say, let's say you did have that. A board vote is an up or down vote, right? You don't have to have unanimous votes. I think that just settling in with that and understanding that like, you're all individuals, you all bring different things to the table, you might have a difference of opinion, and maybe even after like thoughtful, respectful, collaborative discussion, and listen with your heart and your ear, but all of that, there's still going to be some people on the other side of it. It's a vote and then let it go. It goes whichever way it goes. I think if you're a 9-member board and it's a 4-5 vote, you might want to say, let's sit on this and come back, right? Because that's hard. If you have to vote right then, it's the budget, obviously. Hopefully that never happens with the budget, but just to accept that you as the one person can't hold things up, right? And finally, if all else fails, move forward, right? If you've done like the collaborative listening, you've listened with your heart, you've been respectful, you've put out, and like somebody is just like stuck someplace, go for the vote and just let it be. I mean, you can't, some things you can't change. I don't see that on this board. It's not how I'm seeing all of you, but that does happen. So I had that happen. Like we had one board member that was always, maybe took pride in being the no vote. I hope that never happens to you, but if it does, don't get stuck there. Just move on. And finally, because I know you want to get up and move again. Do you have any questions though before we do this? Yes. Do you have any questions or comments?
Well, we just got through our negotiation with our teachers and I don't really, I hear us thinking about what our goals are, which are somehow separate from the goals that the administration has to come up with on an annual basis, which are defined by the AOE.
Well, not really, but I just say you can be.
Well, those seem like they have their own parameters that are not necessarily set by us.
Yes.
But I just don't hear a lot about teachers, and having just gone through negotiations, I don't know what exactly I'm asking. I'm just wondering how that all.
I think it goes there. And I mean, there could be a whole workshop that would just be about that, but I think that right there. So I think that where it says board goals, board priorities, aligned with continuous improvement plan, the indicators of success, all of that involves teachers. It's just that it doesn't necessarily involve teachers in front of the board. It's the superintendent that's in front of the board saying, here's what we got from the work that we did as teachers. Maybe what you're asking for is a more outright description of that. You know what I mean? As part of the board report, when you're doing the continuous improvement plan, saying to the board, here's how many teachers were involved in this. This is the work that they did, not to spend half an hour on it, but like just kind of, because that's where that work is. That work with teachers isn't here. You're right that when you do contract negotiations, then that is the board and the teachers, right? Directly. So that's almost like it's a different thing.
We're also looking at our climate survey, like and so that's fresh on my mind as well as some of the comments that are in there, and ways in which it's hard to Just, it feels like we're somewhat displaced from some of those experiences, and I don't know what the role is that we have, and I don't know that we really don't have much of
Right,
but we have to negotiate that contract, so.
right, and it's, like I said, it's for the whole workshop, but honestly, the point you're bringing up is really important, because what you negotiate in contract is either going to open up avenues for doing great creative work, or in other instances, can be tying the hands of administrators. Right, from doing that. So it matters what happens in negotiations, not the money part, but the language part about like, you know, how long each class period is gonna be, and how many days off they can take, and can they take it before or after vacation, all of that has a direct impact on the schools. So it's unfortunate in a way is that we're just having this little bit of a dialogue here. I think it's unfortunate in a way that the most time that the board spends with a teacher group is in negotiations, right? Other ways that you can bring teachers in is when you have presentations during the event, we do the same, bring teachers in, write it, underscore it. Say, oh, you know, you said you wanted to see teachers work. This is one of the times, because I think it's easy to forget. It's all like a big stew, right? At the end, it's not meat, potatoes, and vegetable. It's like a beef stew or a display or whatever, all mixed up together, and you forget that there were carrots in that stew. You know, it wasn't all meat. So I think that maybe helps a little bit, so that it's a reminder. Teachers are in front of us, but the work that teachers do, that's administration. That's what the administration. Anybody else? That was a really good thought. Anybody else? All right, so now we can go to that last. I'm gonna ask. Okay.
It's slow to process.
No, that's good.
So
What a great example, right? Give time for people. Because some people are like, they're just talking off the top of their heads, and other people are really thoughtful. So there you are.
hold my drink for that. So I mean, I think I agree, Brett, with your sentiment. And you know what I haven't seen yet, since I'm 62 days new or whatever the number is that when we look at outcomes, it's sort of like, well, there's, to use a sports analogy, right? There's the final score, but then there's how you got there.
Yeah.
And I think, like, for me, it's how you get there is just as important as what that final outcome
It
is.
says something about what's coming next.
And so I wonder if, as we look at what are the things that are going to be important for us to look at, like obviously student outcomes is the thing, but it's less so, did you get an A because you crammed and rocked that test, or did you get an A because you leveraged all the resources and went the extra mile? And so I think there's I'd like to understand how we can look at process as well as outcome as a board, so that we know how things are happening.
I think that, like, especially for you do new board member orientation. Just
We're
separate
trying
from
to do that in that.
that list that
That
you've got, yeah.
table that I shared with you is that
Yeah.
list of items that we're trying to cover, kind of one meeting at a time.
Right. Because one thing that you could do is ask the curriculum director, for instance, to sit with new board members and just give you like an overview of how it all works. And it's just curriculum. And then have the business manager come and say, here's how all that finance stuff works. And then have the special ed director come and say, here's how all of that works. So that you've got kind of like that information that it brings you to, because
It's tricky because it's
Yeah.
a very complex system.
yeah, so you just have to ask people to like, get it down to here's how. It's not a 3-hour thing, it's a 45-minute thing, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, you got 45 minutes to like really get to like here's, this, what the board needs to know. Cause you don't need to know like what Mrs. Smith's second grade literacy class is and what components she uses.
Right.
But you need to know that there is a program that we have for math and for literacy.
What does MTSS mean?
What is that kind of thing, yeah. Thank you.
I was just gonna say that too. Justin's point, like when I look back at the last year, so some of my favorite presentations, like yours on MTSS. Rachel Whelan's on the letters program and literacy initiative, some of the ones where we're getting that sort of the recipe, how it's happening, you know, I think. At least personally are some of the most interesting times as a full board.
Right.
And I think some of what the common comments here was, there's like a lot of business being discussed, and so it might be something that we can think about.
And is some of the
agenda.
business, is it able to be put in that consent
Shift it
agenda?
over, yeah.
Yeah, because you trust, right, that the work's getting done.
Well, the other thing I'm thinking about is the front loading prior to, so budget season starts the last meeting in November, right? And so we front load a lot of that work around systems and structures
Yes.
before the budget season, so the board is very aware when we're using terms like.
Yeah.
We want to ensure that we have our MTSS model fully staffed, they know what we're talking about.
Right,
And so it's just making me think the cycle is a really good thing,
Yeah.
because we wouldn't. For board members who aren't new, we wouldn't do that again.
well, it would be
In March.
drinking, and also, you know, there's the part that you have to be careful about, you don't want them to be drinking from the fire hose.
Right.
You have given so much information to a new board member that they go like, no.
Yeah.
It's so much, but so those kind of little crib sheets
Mhm.
around each of those things.
And one of the things we've done the last couple of years is at the retreat, that is usually before the beginning of the year. I just say to the board, what presentations would you like?
Yeah.
You know, what are you really interested in our school district? And I list all those out and then we plan them out.
And that becomes part of the board work.
Yeah.
Highlighted, right? This is the presentation that gets the teachers or the administrators to the board meeting. Here's what I want you to do. Get up, find another postcard, or you can pick the same one if you want. I'll remind you. You've got the one in front of you, so you can think about that was your hopes and dreams. And you've heard this whole big thing about like, here's how good boards work together. Here's how you can like really maximize your effectiveness in order to make sure that your kids get the best possible education with them. What strength are you bringing to this board?
You're keeping it, that's our baby. Keep it.
Every time Jake does that, my first.
Wild idea.
Oh, I really expertise I have word is like. how it's working. Oh, yeah.
Share. Similar. Share. Share. I close to each other. I think it's okay to share.
Yeah, okay, good. Funny, like I have a strength I want to illustrate that.
You can make it work. You can make it work. That's the thing with the picture, right? Yeah, a picture is 1,000 words. All right, wait for meeting style. We'll wait for Rhett. We'll wait for that. Come back. Hopefully he's picked his postcard. Do you have more business after this? A little bit. Yeah. Were you hoping I'd stay for a little bit of it? I was happy to. You just let me know. Yeah. I'll stay.
Mine is much shorter.
Yeah.
That I have, but it's like a history of how we got to the goals that we have right now. And what they are, and I would love for your. Sort of like with your observations of like, oh, well, this is how you.
Yeah.
How you use the cycle well, or here's where you've missed it.
Yeah.
You know,
Or how you could use it better.
yeah.
Here he comes. All right, who wants to go first? Okay, thank you.
My photo is 4 women sitting together, chatting, 2 with dogs, 2 with cats. I spend a fair amount of my workday, working with people who have different ideas of how things should be. Something I have gotten quite good at is helping people find consensus, amongst their varied interests to come to, a common goal. And so I'm hoping that I can use that strength here on the board.
Sharing that.
I'll go. We got this picture of the men sitting on a girder in New York City, and I like working on buildings stuff. So I'm on the facilities committee and the operations committee. I think that's fun.
Sam in the basement of UES. It's something to behold. He loves it.
That's great. Thank you, Tim.
I've got a circa 1930s pool party going on here. And yeah, they look like they're enjoying themselves, and I enjoy being with you all. So it's just like a little pool party.
You bring levity.
I try.
Great, that's great.
Tim and I were gonna arm wrestle for the building workers, but there was an adjacent one of some children at a lollipop, hard-boiled egg and bread and butter sandwich shop. That they've got on the side of the road, which is still very practical. I feel like I have a good like practical approach that is very team-based.
Thank you.
The Migrant Mother by Dorothea Lange. And I grew up pretty low income in Vermont, and I'm thinking a lot about cycles in this conversation. Very different to be back here as a parent this time around. And Vermont has a lot of new arrivals and people who come here and never leave. And a lot of us that are kind of the diaspora who spread out and then sometimes come back. And so I'm thinking a lot about how kids grow up in Vermont and class and access to resources, and also about just kind of loving this state, but also knowing the challenges that it has and has had for a very long time. So it reminds me of this one that they're kind of like very clearly struggling, but also really in it together, which I think is something that Vermont does well when we're at our best.
Thank you for sharing that.
I can go next, sure. So I picked what I will call, because it's untitled, a walking school bus in Paris in the 1940s, 50s. I don't know. These are really old cars. But I think, there's actually a handful of walking school buses that walk by my house during the school year, which I think is a pretty sweet thing to have as a community, where our kids can still walk to school with relative safety and ease. And so I think this picture, I imagine that the school board is sort of here, dragging these kids through congested streets, leading them to wherever they're off to go.
And your role in that?
That we're in the front, we're helping.
Yeah.
Oh, me? Yeah, me.
You're
us.
at the front of the line.
Sure, or at the back, make sure
As
there's
a board member.
there's no hangers on.
Yeah, you're a leader. Thank you.
I chose this photograph where everybody's looking at the same thing. All the people in the photograph are looking at the same thing, and I think one of my strengths, and also one thing that I liked about this is that there's no like standout person. This is a crowd, and I think one of my strengths is that I have a pretty low ego when it comes to leadership, and that I can use that in service of having us all facing and moving in the same direction toward the same goals.
That is a wonderful attribute for a board chair.
Kid and an elephant, and I don't know if I'm the kid or the elephant, but it made me think of empathy.
Right, see, is the kid hugging the elephant?
Yeah.
Yep.
I guess I'll go next. So I picked a card of a man who, it looks like he's definitely. Well, I know it says it's titled Heart Cookies. So it's apparently cookies,
Oh, yeah.
but it sort of looks like. It sort of looks like meat on frying pans, but it's cookies. But I don't know what he's rushing it with, but this makes me think a lot of precision and also consistency, which I think are very
What's the second
important
thing?
things.
You said? Precision?
Precision and
Oh,
consistency.
yeah. Mhm.
And I think those are very important, and consistency is something I think is sort of like a benchmark of like measuring how good you are at something.
Yeah.
And I like to think that I have good consistency.
Thank you. That's great.
I picked a picture of a guy in a farmyard, kind of leading a bull. Is a stick with a bull on, kind of like leading it somewhere. I partly picked it because it was similar to my first picture, which I misidentified as a rhinoceros. It was actually a hippopotamus. My bad.
Easy to mix up.
Also, I shouldn't have called it fat. It's just the way that they're shaped. But so anyway, this picture, I think that my strength is sort of leading, helping the board navigate complex and volatile ed finance topics, which is sort of represented by this bull. Although it could be a steer. I can't really see everything going on in the picture. So that's mine.
Well, it sounds like you've got a pretty good complement of attributes and skill set here to have a really good functioning board. And from what I've experienced and seen tonight, I think you do. So thank you very much for inviting me here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Lily.
I love working with boards because it's very encouraging, right? I work with boards when I do superintendent searches mostly, and I do this kind of work too. I don't know, there's just something that says for me that we're in a good place when I work with board members and I hear what their hopes and dreams are and I hear what they're bringing to the table and stuff, that like
we've got a lot of challenges, but we've got a lot of good people who are like bringing their best selves to the work that needs to get done. So good luck.
Thank you. Excellent.
I'm going to pick up my postcards. Did you want to share a postcard or not?
I can, certainly.
Yeah, why don't you? At the end.
My postcard is of a woman on a rainy day who has her own umbrella and also is holding an umbrella with a contraption over a small dog to make sure that small dog. And if I were to talk about my strengths, I have the belief that we can figure out anything. And so I do that for the board. I think any challenge is done with creativity.
Yeah, enjoy.
Enjoy, yeah. Well, mostly good.
Thank you again, Elaine. We're gonna, as I said, the overview that I have is meant to try to take what Elaine shared with us in the sort of like, Elaine gave us the general overview, and I was trying with this to map that onto the process that we used to establish the current priorities and goals that we have. And I think you might have, I don't know, you can either scroll up and down for the
Yeah, I can
PDF.
scroll up
Okay,
and down. I
great.
just
That's
can't-
perfect.
I just can't make it any bigger than that, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, hopefully board members can pull it up in front of them if they would like to look at it. And I am going to go through the timeline portion of it fairly quickly and then just pull out the pieces of it that are applicable, I think, to that sort of cycle graphic that and overview that Elaine was sharing with us. And one of the reasons I'll go over the timeline fairly briefly is that I went all the way back to when we became merged district, just to give us that full historical context, which happened in 2018. And then, and in fact, shortly after becoming a full merged district, we hired Libby. She started in July 1 of 2018. And in that first year, she was advocating for the board to do a process where, as a brand new district, essentially, because we were now a new district, having merged, we should do this, a community engagement process to determine the vision and values of this new district. That was significantly interrupted by COVID. In fact, we had a consulting firm hired to get started and then said, oops, sorry, we can't actually do a community engagement because of the COVID shutdown. And so we took a little bit of time once we were able kind of like back up and running. It took us until 2022 to actually make that happen. And we hired Nathan Suter to facilitate and run the community engagement process. That takes us to the next slide, where I just go a little bit more in depth into that process, where we established a subcommittee of the board. It was a pretty big subcommittee. It had about a handful of students on it. It had staff, we had community members, a couple of board members, and Nathan was facilitating it. The committee was in charge of doing a lot of different kinds of outreach efforts to the community and with the community, and then synthesizing all of that information. So when Rhett was actually, you were the board member on this, so Rhett could actually say what those committee meetings were like, but just the broad overview was from about March through August, the committee members would do various listening sessions. They were at the farmers market, they went to Green Up Day, they playgrounds, all different places where people in our community were, and also did an online survey so that even if we weren't actually having face-to-face conversations, we were able to draw information in. And then with all of the data that we got in those outreach efforts, synthesize that into the report that Nathan shared with us in August of 2022. And then the board then used to draft our values, vision and approach, which then led to what our priorities are. So that got us to the point where we were able to say with pretty good confidence, even though we were now a district that was 4.5 years old, that we had established the vision and the priorities of the district. The board used those priorities to establish what the goals and objectives are, and that is the next slide. In 2023, I think most board members are pretty familiar with the full document that has the priorities, the objectives, and then it has the indicators of success. And this is where we landed with, based on what our priorities are of closing the academic achievement gap, having every person in our school community have a sense of belonging, safety, and wellness, and a priority of community engagement and accountability with our community. We wanted to, those were sort of like the very broad strokes. And then those, what you see in the subsections of each of those is what we were doing our best to be very clear about what we meant by those. And we felt like what we then need to do was give the administration the indicators of success. Is like, this is what the board will look at to say whether or not we think we're achieving these objectives. And there was a lot of iteration that went into establishing these. So that happened in 2023. We actually needed more time. I think it took a couple of like board retreats and meetings to land the first two. And then we actually had a hard time keeping the momentum going. And so we didn't land the communication priority. If you look back on slide 4, all those objectives within the communication priority for another year or so. But that work was carried on by the equity committee. Actually said, why don't we just take this on and we'll do the work and then bring that to the board. Scott and I were on the equity committee at the time to hammer all of that out. And then starting in back in 2022 actually was when we received our first student data report. And so we get those now 3 times a year. And I would say it's been another iterative process for us to line up those data reports with our goals and objectives. I think the administration at the beginning was just like, we've got some data, we want to show it to the board. And the board hasn't done as much as I think we could do to say, this is what we're looking for, which is one of the things I'm looking forward to us really landing when we do our board retreat in June. But that's just to say that it's been since 2022 that we've been getting information on how our students are doing. You look like you want to say something.
Just trying to take it all in.
I know, I have
One of the questions
And
we have, Elaine, is what's the level of data the board should see?
Yeah, I was thinking it's a lot. It's like, it feels like drinking from the fire
Right.
hose.
Like,
So it should be like high level data, right? Like, maybe it is 3rd grade reading. Maybe it is what students who are on grade level in math at grade 4 and 8 are then in, how are they doing on their SATs or whatever exam is at the high school, kind of like triangulated things like that, big level, not like the,
not screener data.
no, because it'd be too much. I mean, it would be like, at some point, you're just kind of like,
and I will say those first data reports were so much that we had long conversations about them, but they were all around like, please tell me what I'm looking at.
yeah,
Because
right. And what do I do with
At least that
this?
was what my experience was. I had a lot of questions for our admin team because I didn't understand what I was looking at.
Yeah, so I think like higher level data, that's like it's the dipstick, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're checking the engine oil and you're saying, or you're taking the temperature. We're meeting this. And then from that, you assume that all of the other things that are embedded underneath are there. If the kid can read at grade level, like grade 3, there's a whole bunch of other literacy skills that child has that you don't need to see before the board.
Okay.
That is proxy for. So what are those proxy indicators? And I don't think you need a million of them. I think it's just going to tire people, and over time, it's going to be a blur and you won't really know what to focus on. But if you can like agree on like, what are the proxy indicators?
Right. Because that's some feedback that we've gotten is that what we have right now, and you can see it when you look at slide 4, that's a lot there. And then almost all of that, I couldn't copy and paste the whole page because there's even more.
I mean, it's an indication of what great work you did, but then like in order to be able to digest it, it's important to just have the little think.
Yeah.
Well, I will say if you click through, and look at the 2022 report versus the 2024 report versus the 2020, like the amount of data right, has gone down, and so we're sort of settling in at that higher level.
Yeah.
We've done a nice job refining it over time, certainly.
Yeah, we've gone
Can't wait to
from,
see 2026.
we've
We
gone
have
from,
found where we weren't, like, we didn't have a data management system.
Right.
So if the board asked for data, I couldn't give it to them,
Right,
you know, so there was some work to do there
Right.
first, so.
and you're not the only one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So. Go ahead. You're okay.
I was gonna sort of say, I think with the more recent ones, like the data is fine, but I think the trends and context are what's really important to see, because I'm not a academic expert, and
Right.
so, you know, it's, if you give me a number for third grade reading, it's hard for me to know what that means, so what I think you guys have been doing better lately is providing some of the context to like
Yeah.
help
Mhm.
me understand what I'm looking at,
Yeah.
instead of sort of just a bunch of numbers. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
I'm thinking about that, like, have you ever seen that spider graph where it has probably like 8 indicators and it shows over time, like, you know, so if it's reading. It's like, in this year, the reading level was here, and in the next year it was up here, and it's just like you see the whole graph at once. But again, not a million indicators, 8 indicators, and can you picture it? So you can see, like, when you're looking at it, where in this spider graph, like the shading within the web is higher, doing better, where the shading is lesser. So there are things like that you can do that just visually, immediately, you look at it and you go like, oh, I can see that this is where we need to pay attention. And it's easier for the public. I don't even know if they call it that. I call it that because it looks like a spider.
Okay.
I can send a copy of something.
I mean, there are times where we had, you know, we're at 84% proficient in 5th grade reading, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah,
And we had community members saying that's pretty bad. You know, like, so we weren't putting it in any kind of context,
right.
right? So we learned that we have to put everything in some
Yeah.
sort of context for
Right.
people or else.
Yeah,
But
I
there-
think one of the things when I was looking at data, looking at this now, it's like, when we say things are good. Like, we have to define good, so that when we look at a number, it's like. That is good, and it's very good, or it's just above good, or real close to what good is, right? So. I think it's the context, right? And anything you
Yes.
can do to show, like, over time, like how things are trending.
It-
Because there's this sort of like perception that, like, in the before times before COVID. Things were great,
Yes,
and then
right,
COVID
right,
made
right.
everything awful, and now we're in this like post time. And it's like, well, we're in this post time and it's so different. But are we also looking at like how we get back, right? And what does that take? And
I think that the context is important. Like, you know, it is true that there are some people that are gonna say, unless it's 100%, right? I mean, I had a community member say that to me once. It was about graduation rate. And, you know, 360 people in the auditorium, and Mrs. Pinckney, are you satisfied with like 92% graduation rate? Is that okay? And I went, no, 100% would be great. That's what we'd like. But 92% compares to, here's what it is at the state level, here's what it is in our neighboring, you know, to provide the context. But there'll always be those people that want, that's what they want to hear, 100%. If it's your kid that's not reading, you want 100% for sure. I totally get that, but you have to like manage that, and partly you manage it by sharing. Here's how we compare, right? Not to like put anybody else down, but to just get a sense of like, this is pretty darn good. We're doing really well here. Or here's an area that we really need to pay attention to.
Oh, so even a question for you then, too. So we were talking before a bit about kind of maybe needing to focus a bit more on student outcomes in our board meetings. So how do you see data related to goals interacting with a need to focus on student outcomes? So is it bringing data in more regularly? Is it kind of like pulling specific things out that are related to a topic that we're discussing, or how do those
I
connect?
see it a couple ways. One is, I heard that you have like a board work plan and you are asked by the superintendent, like, what topics do you want to hear about this year? And then those topics, there's likely a data point within those topics. So that would be, and maybe there's a reminder, oh, here is the data point this month around that. That's one. And then at the end of the year retreat or the summer retreat is a time when perhaps you could ask for like, we just want to see like a comprehensive look at our system. What are, like, you know,
8, 10, 12 data points that you can bring in to just share. Here's how we're doing. But in the regular board meetings, it shouldn't be just random data brought in. It should be tied to like whatever the presentation is or. And then, of course, there's the annual report that's going to have like a slew of data around.
Wouldn't the data be tied to student outcomes because the goals focus on student outcomes? If the board, when the board
Yeah.
sets goals, they should be about the outcomes that we're hoping to drive with our
Yeah.
goals, and then we say
The board can have goals that aren't student outcomes too, though, right?
like facilities or.
It could be facilities, but it could also be,
Right.
You don't have this problem, I know, because I had a conversation earlier with Libby about this, but let's say you had a lot of attrition. A goal could be, here's a goal. We want to take care of that.
Yeah.
You administration, I don't care how you do it, but somehow we don't want like 30% of our people leaving every year. It is not the best for our kids. It is not the way we're going to be the best school district we can be. So a goal could be something other than outcomes, but it would still be like, okay, what's going to be the very clear board statement to the superintendent about what you're looking for.
Got it.
I guess I would say, like, personally, bringing in random data is not helpful. I don't think that's helpful. I think it should always be tied to something that you're doing at the board level that's part of a presentation. You know what I mean? I don't think you should have an agenda item that is this month's data.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Without
maybe
context.
the data should be the outcome story.
Yes, and the presentation that's being given, and what does that look like in your department?
Okay. Well, I realize this isn't exactly the same as the cycle, but
it's in there.
It was an attempt at putting the
Yes.
concrete work that our board does.
Yeah, and every once in a while, there's another bigger cycle, right? And that cycle is what is the vision mission? And then you're looking out to the public, just like you did with the public engagement. And I hope that included teachers and, you know, to say, what do you care about now? Like, tell us what your hopes and dreams are. What does it look like? And how do we frame that then into? And so now you did all that big work. At some point, you might want to revisit it and do a series of public engagements that are, hey, what's changed? Does this still work? Do we need to? But you don't necessarily need to start over. I mean, I used to say in my own district, we did what I call the small s, small p strategic planning. You know, every year we were like very strategic and we'd look back at previous years, but we didn't stop and do anything that looked like, okay, in 5 years, this is where we're going to be.
Right.
Because things changed so darn fast. It was like before you even finished the darn plan, you were adjusting it.
Yeah.
Or realizing it was dated.
I appreciate this broad highlight. This was really helpful to me to kind of see sort of like the work that can be more without.
It's a lot of work.
Here. So I appreciate you putting that together.
Yeah. Good.
Makes me feel old. It's because the first one, beginning, is great. I'm just kidding. Are any other questions for Elaine or thoughts on how the board impacts student outcomes with the work that we do?
I would have one closing comment. I think that the whole communities, including students, look at the board, right? And see how you work together and see the work that you're doing. And that either is a really positive thing or not. And I think in your case, it is really a positive thing, but I think that impacts student outcomes too, right? It's all connected. It's like, you know, if the kids see the grownups behaving in ways that are professional and respectful and focused on the needs of the students, they go like, I like being part of this system. This feels like they're being intentional and they're being consistent about the work, and that feels good, right?
Leading by example.
Leading by example is like one big way that you do that work. Yeah.
Well, thank
All right.
you. Thank you
It's
very
been a
much,
pleasure.
Elaine.
Thanks, Elaine.
It's been a pleasure.
We are going to move on to policy monitoring.
policies C9, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and F1, travel reimbursement. We could take these as a package. I'm looking at my parliamentarian. Is this okay to do? Okay, good. We'll move them and then have opportunity to discussion and questions. Is there a motion to approve the monitoring reports for C29 and F1?
So moved.
Thanks, Tim. Is there a second? All right, thanks, Scott. And discussion? Or questions?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
There are some references here, which I really appreciated, about things that you need from the board on this, Libby. And so I was interested in talking about some of those, and if you guys talked and your team about what that might look like. I'm thinking particularly in the future work section here. You talked about continuing our discussions concerning inequitable traditions within our schools. I think that's a little more like down the road. But I was wondering about number 4, and if you guys talked about what it would look like for us to reinvigorate policy efforts that center equity work. And if you kind of what the thought was there.
Several years ago. Maybe it was maybe Scott and Brett must have been on the board. The policy committee did have an equity lens overlay to look at policies.
Yep.
I could probably dig it up. But I'm sure you have it as well, because I think you have it, yeah. And that was meant that whenever a policy was being discussed, to have that lens right next to it. I just don't think it, I'm not aware of it happening right now. It could be happening and I don't know. Because I'm not right now in policy committee meetings, but Tim and I have been talking about me getting into policy meetings. So when it says reinvigorate, that once was happening for a very short period of time, and I just don't think it is now. And the tool has been, I don't think the board created the tool. I think we got.
We did.
Oh, you did?
The equity
Okay.
committee, that was like one of the first things we did.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Was on it.
Emma and Amanda.
Yep. Yeah, we
Oh.
created the equity tool, and then Emma wasn't on the equity committee at the time, but she was on the policy committee, and she refined it so that it was actually like more like a Google
Yeah, it was a
form
Yeah.
that you can use instead of, we just had it in a Word doc.
Kind of like a check for ourselves.
Yeah.
When creating policy, and some it doesn't apply to and some it does, right? So one of the pieces in the equity and the DEI policy is that the board will use an equity focus in policy work. So I think that's future work that we can get better at.
Great. Thanks. Another question that I had is if you had any kind of overview here. This obviously, like you said, it's ongoing work. You know, there's never really going to be a point when we say nailed it. You know,
Yeah, it's really hard for me to say compliant, like we're compliant with where we are. Yeah.
I was wondering if you guys talked a little bit about kind of given where we are in this process and having this policy. What does success sort of look like now? Where do you, have you guys talked at all about what that might look like in a year to 2 years? Just to sort of like give us a sense of, even though it's an ongoing process, do you feel like, you know, we've really done a lot of work in this area and there's some tweaking to be done? Like kind of where are we as a district in terms of DEI?
So if you
In this area.
go into our anti-racism and equity plan, which is on our website, just to people who haven't seen it, in multiple languages, there are goal areas. And so there, I'm pulled it up this afternoon just to anticipation. So I appreciate the question beforehand. So I can. Understanding of anti-racism and equity, the learner experience and outcomes, belonging in community, accessibility, inclusion, and accountability and transparency. And so in each of those goal areas, there's what we hope it looks like in the future, as well as strategies to get there. Do we have like exact, you know, data metrics for those? Not in everyone, with the exception of possibly belonging, because we actually can measure that through, and we do measure students' sense of belonging in our panorama data, which you'll get a presentation on in the end of the year. And we can look at learner experiences and outcomes in certain ways. We can disaggregate data. We can look at disproportionality. a lot of times when we're talking about data, it gets tricky at the board level because our N sizes are too small to be sharing publicly, unfortunately. So we look at that internally quite a bit, disproportionality. We've also looked at, discipline reports, and it's decreased significantly over time, chronic absenteeism, all of those things are indicators of learner experience. So we do have indicators inside of our equity plan. Just didn't put it into the policy monitoring piece. Yep. But if new board members haven't read the anti-racism and equity plan, it's a pretty good document. It's you can find it on our website. If you need the direct link, just let me know.
Thanks, thank you. Are there other questions about either of the policies or their monitoring reports? Or thoughts, discussion items?
I just had a question, Libby, for you on the travel reimbursement. How often, how is this received? Is this sort of just a given policy? Are there concerns around this or, yeah? Okay.
I think it's a mandatory policy that we have to have, but it also just states federal law.
That's
So it's, yeah, we have a couple of policies that are in statute that you have to have as required policies, but they're also like special education, homeless, like all of this is law, and yet we need a policy to state what the law is. So
And make sure we're following it.
make sure we're following it. Yeah, I guess it requires us to monitor it and that kind of thing, but
That's
this is
true.
this one is it's one of the easier policies to monitor.
Yes, I figured. I figured. I was wondering, yeah, as I'm wondering, the IRS rate and how quickly they're gonna react.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So all those in favor of the monitoring reports for C29 and F1, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So it is 8:45, but I think we should just go ahead and finish out. Okay. Yeah, Libby was saying maybe if we get going too late, we could move the executive session to another meeting, but I think it's good to yeah, we'll see. Yeah, I hope so. So we have the two motions in front of us to send ourselves into executive session. Is there anyone who would like to make those motions?
First motion.
Can you say it out loud?
I move to find the premature general public knowledge regarding the board's strategy regarding labor relations agreements with employees will clearly place the board at substantial disadvantage because the board risks disclosing its negotiation strategy if it discusses the proposed contract terms in public.
Thanks, Tim. Is there a second? Second, thanks, Scott. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and the second one.
Keep going. I move to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing the board's strategy regarding labor relations agreements with employees under the provisions of Title I, Section 313 A1B of Vermont statutes, labor relations agreements with employees.
Thanks, Tim. Is there a second? Thanks, Scott. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries.